Hey everyone, this is Rebecca again, and today I want to start a three-part series on relational databases. And I'm going to try to do this justice and go into detail, but at the same time try to keep it short. I think detail is what I sense is most appreciated in some of these in some of these videos. So with that in mind, let me give you a preview of what I'll do in this video and then what you can expect in the upcoming videos as well. First of all, we'll go over just a brief explanation about what a relational database is, and I'll demonstrate really quickly where that's at and how you would initiate that in Notion, just to kind of give a context. Then I'm going to give some general tips that seem to have emerged for me when I create a relational database. These are not, I'm sure these are not the only tips that you would find. They're just some tips that have become apparent to me as I've worked through and created some of my own relational databases. And then finally, what I'm going to do is give 3 examples. Today I'm only going to focus on one example, and that example is going to be integrating my task list with my journal, and to show how I've done that very specifically. In upcoming videos, I'm going to take 2 more use case scenarios that I have or are working on. One is a relational database that I've established between my customer requests, my production list, and I actually should add one more in there. And the third piece would be my task list. So there's a 3-way relationship going on between 3 different databases here. So what you're going to see in the upcoming videos is a demonstration of relational databases that increases in complexity. So this one is just a relationship between 2 databases. This one is going to be a relationship between 3 databases, and like I said, I should just put that in there. And then the third one is one that I'm somewhat still in the process of creating, and this one is particularly important to me because this is the first time I'm collaborating with other people, and so I'm trying to make sure that these relational databases are functioning well, and that they're as simple and as mistake proof as possible. And basically the event is a wine tasting that I am responsible for organizing, that takes place in the first week of May. There's a lot of pieces to this. There's the wine tasting itself. There's an auction. There's, we need to call people. There's gaining sponsors. There's a registration. All of these different pieces, and I'm going to try to see if I can juggle all those and keep them all straight in Notion this year. In the past, I've often used a spreadsheet, either in um, uh, Google Drive, another one, Smart List. I've used that one before, but this year I'm going to try to see if I can do that in Notion. I will say that for a little bit I backed off on Notion a little bit. Again, I run into those spots where, gosh, it's not functioning like I need it to, or whatever. But I've come back to it again because it's so easy to use, and so inviting to use, and the databases are so powerful. So I'm back at it again, and I just need to be patient with those places where I am hoping that the good folks at Notion continue to work. I know that they need time to good product also. So with that in mind, let's just jump up in the start. Just as an overview, a relational database basically takes 2 different databases. So in this case, the demonstration is showing an orders databases and a customers database. So imagine this is going to keep track of all of those details. So their email, their address, their phone number, their name, all that stuff would go in this database. And imagine this database being the orders that somebody is fulfilling, perhaps. And the relational database, the relational part, is where these 2 databases are functioning together. So in other words, if you change something on the customer database, or linked to a particular order, and vice versa, if you change an order, it's going to link to or change something in the customer database. It's something that connects those 2 databases so that it makes it easier, on one hand, to of customers and keep that somewhat separate, but also sometimes you need to link it to an order. You don't want that order messed up in your customer relationship database, but you still need that linkage. So that's basically what a relational database is, in my understanding. Again, I am so not an expert on this stuff, but this is my um, best explanation in layperson's terms about what it is. So where does this fit, and how is it used in Notion? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you a demonstration, but before I do, I need to unlock this. I have this locked. This is just an aside, okay? I have this locked because you'll notice as I move my cursor around here, you don't get little plus marks and stuff coming up. It makes it kind of clean. When I unlock this so that I can change it, you'll notice, my marks start coming up so that I can to change and make it revisions to this page. If you want to do that to one of your own pages, simply come up here and use this page lock button, and that relocks it. You'll see this is locked again, and I can't change anything in here. I could look at the original, but I'm clicking all over and I can't change anything in here until I go and unlock it. So I'm going to unlock that for a second so that I can demonstrate where this is at, where you would get to relational databases in Notion. First of all, you need to have a database. You need to create a database. So I'm just going to do a backspace, and I'm going to do an inline database because I don't want the whole page to be a database. So just want a little tiny one that's going to be inserted right here. So table inline. So here's a little tiny database, and I'm not going to worry about these details right now. But if I wanted to create a relationship to another database, the way I'm going to do that is introduce a new column. And here where it says text, I'm going to go all the way down to relation. And it's going to ask me to pick a different database. So now I have some databases in here. I'm not going to click one right now, but I wanted to show you where this was at. Actually, maybe I will. And I do have customer orders here. So I would just pick that one. Create a relation. And you don't see anything here now, but if I wanted to pick a customer, I could go in here and add that in, for example, click out of that. And now I've established a relationship to this particular entry on another database. If I click on that, I can see the details for that entry. Whoops, I hate that. Come back here. Okay, there we go. Now let me get back to where I was at. Go back here. So, hide that again. So I'm going to come back down here. That's what that is. And if I want to change that, let's say that I want to call that customers, spell here, customers. That's going to change the title, and it's going to let me know that that's where that's at. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that right now because all I wanted to do there was show you where that's at and how you would introduce that if you had your own database in your page in Notion. Now, before I go further, just a few general tips that have occurred to me as I've worked with databases. One, I'm going to lock this down again. One, I think it's really important to be very clear about what your purpose is with the databases that you're trying to connect. If you try to do too much in one database, I start to find where starts to get convoluted, and I'm having a hard time keeping straight in my head where stuff is and what database and so on. So let each database do its own thing. So if a database is keeping track of customers or customer addresses, that's all you're doing in that database. You're not trying to keep track of customer orders or whether an order is completed or anything like that. The sole purpose of that database is going to be keeping track of your customers. Likewise, in the first case that I'm going to show you here, I'll show you two different databases. One is my task list. That's all it's doing. I'm not keeping track of anything else in that database. The second one is a journal, and it's a record of what my thoughts and what's gone on in the past, and it's an archive, if you will. And that's the sole purpose. The purpose of the journal is not to keep track of my tasks. I mean, it's going to be a place where I log what I've done, but the purpose of the journal is it's not to keep track of task management. It's a more of a reflection and a record of what's gone on in the past and that sort of thing. So be kind of clear about what your purpose is. Or in another case, this one here that I'm going to show you, um, the one, the first database, its sole purpose is to keep track of a customer request. When a customer comes in, boom, I open that up and I take the details for their order. I don't do anything else in there except take those details down. Later, I will create the relationship to the production list, or that, which is where I keep track of what needs to be made and that sort of thing. And that's all that this list does, is help me keep track of what I need to make. So see, each database has its own purpose. So that's the first thing I would say, is be clear about the purpose of each database. Keep those purposes separate, and that will, I think, help you later on. The second thing is, I would say, to build each of those databases before you try to connect them. So it's kind of keeping in line with this first one. Know what the purpose is, know what you're trying to do in each of those databases before you start to try to connect them. The third thing is kind of consider your workflow when you're establishing the relationship between these. So for example, this one here was very clear to me. You know, when a customer comes in, what I was finding is I don't have time at that moment to hunt around and figure out where to enter them. I need to be able to open a page and start taking their information. I don't have time to go searching for them, or searching for a product. At that time, I want my focus to be on them and taking down the information that they're giving me. So for me, I started by making this one here, the customer request database first, so that could be my focus. And then I established the relationship between this to my production list, and I kind of went from there. Um, I have more time when I'm reflecting on production, but when I'm reflecting on and paying attention to customers, I don't have time here to be worrying about um, where things are at in Notion. So I wanted to make this database as easy as possible, and then making the link to the production. Um, so that's the third thing I'd say. And then the fourth thing, and this came to me just recently, and I don't know if this is a bug in Notion or if it's just a good practice. Um, what I find is that if you're establishing a relationship, and let's say you have a linked database of an original database elsewhere, like for example, I have a master task list, and then in several places I have linked to that master task list. I have um, um, basically I've created a linked database, which is a smaller version or a filtered version of this master task list. And I've placed this in various pages in the rest of my Notion setup. When I created a relationship from one of the linked databases, and then I tried to use that relationship in another linked database, it didn't work. I couldn't pull up, it wasn't connecting. But when I made the relationship from the original master task list, and this will become more clear as I demonstrate, but when I made the connection from the original master task list instead of a linked database from that master task list, it worked wherever I put these linked databases. So I guess if you imagine, you've created a master task list up at the top and you've linked to it in different places, don't create the relationship in one of these linked databases, create it from that master task list. Um, and like I said, I don't know if that's a bug, because, these linked databases are all part of that master task list, but for some reason I couldn't get it to work from a different linked database after I had created the relationship from a previous linked database. I hope that, without demonstrating, that might sound confusing, but hang with me on that. We'll make that make sense. So with those tips in mind, let's go ahead and start with this first one, and that's basically how I integrate my task list with my journal. So we'll jump in there. So following the guidelines I set up before, I want to make sure that I have established the purpose and design of each database. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how my task list is set up, but only briefly, because I've really gone over that in a lot more detail in other videos. If anything, this will just maybe show you a few of the things I've changed. But the focus on this task list, this master task list, is just to keep track of tasks. That's all that this does. It's my It's where everything gets dumped. Now you're going to see I've kind of done some new things in here. Um, so for example, now these two are going to connect to the journal. So hold off on those and we'll come back to that. This is the task. This is what typically this would be over here on the first column because it's the one that can't be changed. It's the one that, I can open these, whereas I don't open this. So this is the major column, the first primary column. I've just moved these two columns to the left of it, but typically you would find this column right there. I've just simply moved it. So this is the primary column that can't be changed. It has to be a text column. So I've shifted it over there because of the way I use it in different places. Date, I've gone ahead and consolidated this to using both the beginning and the ending date in the same place. Um, in previous videos, I tried to have a separate start and a separate end date, and I've ended up trying to keep things more simple. So I've just consolidated that. The timeline, I go into that in a lot more detail in another video, but basically where this becomes important. No, actually, let me go back because I don't even do it that way anymore. So hang tight. There we go. If I was to change this to a board view, that is where this timeline is going to become more important to me. What I've done, let me change that to timeline. So this is where the timeline becomes important, where I kind of can focus on today, this week, February, and so on. Again, I've focused on that in a lot more detail in another video, so I'm not going to get too hung up on that. Let me go back to the table. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I've shifted here. One thing I've added here is the type, because sometimes I find, and now I know I've got this filtered. Let me take the filter off and that will help. Right now I've only got wine tasting in here. So the type, sometimes what I put in here, so a read later, this was an email that, I don't have time for it right now. I need to read it. It's not a pressing sort of thing. And then when I get to reading, I can just pull up all of the read laters at the same time and kind of go through them that way. Notes are things that I want to reflect on a calendar, but they're not a task. So like this one is, this person is gone for a week. So I can demonstrate that with a note on my calendar and not have it be a task. I can weed those out if I need to. Context I've already talked about. These are the major contexts. So I have one for my personal, one for the soap business that I am the owner of, and then one for the nonprofit where I work at. That's very basic. So if I just need to focus on soap shop, I just filter this down to soap shop. If I need to focus on personal stuff, so that's what context is. Project is the different projects within each of those areas. Sub-projects becomes important because, like for the wine tasting, there's a lot of different pieces of that. Promotion, there's a lot of different pieces of that. So promotion could be newsletter, it could be social media, it could be the website. So that's how I demonstrate that. Priority, of course, assigned to is something I'm using more now since I'm going to try to collaborate with others on the wine tasting. And the others is just there's a relational database I have established. Another one, the first one was the finish date. And I've thrown these in here just because I have found them helpful for filtering and sorting at times. So that's the task list. The only thing it's recording here are tasks. It's the date completed. This is the relation that I'm going to show you between my journal and the task list. It's its own separate column. It has nothing to do with the journal in this except connecting it to the journal. So when I say that a task is completed and I click there, oh, what happened? Oh, so I need to usually here we go. See, so they start to populate, and I can pick the day. So I don't have one in here yet for today because I'm going to demonstrate that today. But if I wanted to mark something as completed yesterday, I would just click that. Boom, it's in here, so I can see that here. But it's also going to reflect and be loaded into the journal as something that I did that day. If I was to pull that day up and look. So I'm going to clear that right now because I didn't do that yesterday and I don't want to lose it. Now, I do still have a done column, and I was commenting on the Notion Facebook group that I found this useful. It is a very visual sort of thing. It doesn't do much more than that. But what I've started using this for, what I found is if I could filter date completed out here, so for example, I have a filter which says that this this done check mark is not completed. And so anything that's completed gets removed from this master task list unless I need to see it. Why did I do that? The reason I did that is because I have some repeats in here. Notion doesn't have a way to create repeats. So sometimes I want to make a notation that I've done something that day, but I don't want it to go away from this master task list. So the way that I have managed that is I can go ahead and click that I've done this on a certain day. This is slow going because there. Let's see if that pulls it up. It's running slow right now, which is apparently why that's not populating. I don't want it to create a new page, and I don't think it will, but I'm scared to try because I don't want it to do that. It says this is using a lot of memory, so I'm imagining that's part of what's going on here. It's trying to pull those in. There it is. So if I collect something, tap something in here, yes. So what that does on my today work, and I'm going to show you that in a minute, I filter out date completed, so it goes away from what I've done that day. But this is what causes it to filter out of this master task list. Another case, if I complete something off of my Artisan.so production task list, I this uh, this is a way for me to filter it out of one database and not filter it out of another database. So that's how I'm using it. Let me come back to that and see if I can make it more clear in another as I proceed. But that's why I have those two separate things. It's very easy for me to check if I want it completely off of this master task list. It's a one-time thing. I don't ever have to see it again. Then this gets checked. But if it's something that's going to be repeating, and I want to note the day that it was done on, but I don't want it to leave here, this is where this becomes very important. So if I want to note it, I'll note it here, but I won't click it here. So that way it never leaves this master task list. Okay, hope that made sense. We'll come back to that. So that's the master task list. Let me go back here. So as I said, we want to keep those purposes separate. So the purpose of the design of the journal, I want to demonstrate this because I've changed this. So in this example right here, this was what I was doing in October. I had all of these pages here. What I was doing for my daily list is I was physically dragging something up to today to mark it as done. And anyway, it was kind of, I had all these pages, and yes, I could collapse and expand those. But I was physically dragging stuff up into some place. So what I've done is instead of having all these pages and all of these pages within all of these pages, I have turned my journal into a database of its own. But instead of looking like this, I'm using the Notion's new gallery feature. So let's take a look at that. My journal now looks like this. So using the gallery feature, each day has its own page, and the reason I've gone with the gallery, I think it looks nice. I can throw in, I'm frequently taking pictures of something. We had the equinox recently, so there's a picture of that. There's some pictures from special people. In January, I managed to close all of my Apple rings, so that was, that's probably the first time I've ever been intentional enough to do that. So that's kind of an aha there. I take a lot of pictures of my pets because they're my family. This was something that I had completed yesterday, so threw that picture in there. So it's just a nice presentation for the journal. I can change the look of this, and I'm going to show you that just to show you it's still a database, okay? Now you're going to see some other things in here. Let me come back to those. let me go back to this journal view or the gallery view. So what happens, like I said, I hadn't created today's yet. So I'm going to create today's post. This is my journal page for today. I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to do at today, just like I've done in the past and I've demonstrated in other videos. And what this does is that keeps this page always marked by today's date, even though I've thrown at today in there. When it comes, tomorrow or next week, this day is going to change to February 3rd. And you'll see that in these other posts here. The title sticks to that date. Usually what I do is I throw in an icon because those icons are easy to see for me. And I'll just show you what I do is I go and I have a file for these. I go to Documents on my computer, Media, Icons, Calendar icons, and then I have days of the month. And I've got different colors here, so we'll just use red today. Today is Sunday. This was a pack that I downloaded. That's where I got these. They have a transparent background, so they look good no matter what kind of cover I use. Today's the 3rd, so I'm going to throw 3rd in there, choose that, and that changes that icon. So that's very easy for me to see. Now, sometime later when I've taken some pictures, I need to make some soap today later, so I might throw a picture of the made soap or some. I'm always taking pictures or capturing images, so I'm not worried about filling that in, but it keeps it pretty. And a lot of times in the morning when I get going, I go ahead and I open this as a page because that way it's no distractions. And then what I can do, again, boy, my computer's slow right now. It's probably hot or something. And so here's my journal page. And if I've already got an image, I'll throw that in there at that point. Now, I've got some other things in here. Somebody was recently asking me, what my questions are. Have I whittled down the early morning questions that I frequently use? I still am working on that, but the ones that I've put in here because they have stuck with me the most as something that really made a difference for me at one point. This is my checklist, for example, that I wanted to track this each day. So, for example, if you're tracking how much water you drink, perfect place to do that. Just everything you put in here, any property you add here. So let me see here. Add a property. These can be like at the top of your journal that you're going to do each day. Now, mind you, it's going to show up on your spreadsheet, which can be good. Like if you're tracking weight, throw a number in there. Number. Change that label to weight. Okay, you could drag that up to, the things that you're tracking daily, and then throw 200 pounds. No, I don't weigh 200 pounds, but I'm going to throw that in there. So, and there's your weight. Now, what happens is if you were to go back to this journal and turn this into a spreadsheet or to that table view, you can get a really good quick look. Like, okay, here's the rings. Imagine, let me pull this weight back over here. Let me throw that in there again. You can start to see, a record of your weight right here. Or in my case, I could see a record of rings closed. You could also change that into a calendar view, and then you would be able to see that over time. And I think you can show, let me see here, properties. Let's do this. So you can turn things on. Look at that. So now you can look on this calendar and you could do weight, you could turn weight on. So see, there's 200. Then you would see on a calendar, this is still your journal, but now you've got a record showing the things that you're tracking each day right on that calendar. That's still your journal though. So let me go back to, again, this is where I pretty much keep it. Let me go back to this page. So, and then here's where you start your thoughts. What I'll do is I'll just kind of slip into here. So there was a quick journal entry that I posted that day on last Monday, and so on. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. So that one was a little bit longer. So And I don't, these are empty because I think I threw that in there after I had done that. Um, so anyway, that's kind of how you can keep track of that. So the other one that the other questions I started to talk about, and then I got off track. This year, this quarter, this month, this week, and today, these questions I have found to be, it's a simple thing, but they're so effective at drilling me down and keeping me focused on what's my priority. What am I? So the long view of this question is every day you ask yourself, or you remind yourself, you write down, out of all of the things that's important or that are available to you, the most important thing that's more important than anything else I do this year is blank. Or a better way to phrase that, I will accomplish blank that matters more than anything else this year. Does that make sense? So, um, the thing that matters more than anything else I do this year is blank. The thing I will accomplish that matters more than anything else, or more than all of the others, that I will accomplish this year is blank. And do the will accomplish, because that's a very active, it's assertive. It's like, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to get done this year. And each morning, ask yourself that. And then, I do the same for the quarter, this month, this week. Now, ideally, these are somewhat lining up, maybe a little bit. What I find sometimes is that they're not, or like for example, maybe one of my objectives this year is to have everything full in my soap shop by the end of this year. But this quarter, I need to really make sure I get ready for taxes. Okay, so that could be an example where, maybe this is a little bit off from this, but if they shut me down because I haven't paid my taxes, then I'm not getting closer to that either. So that could be a way to drill that down, and it helps keep you focused about, because I find I have so many things I want to do, and I can't do them all. So this helps me. I think this helps me focus and remind me, what do you really want to do? Um, if you're not happy with where you're at, this is a great way to kind of do that. That's something that I'm doing right now. You could throw other questions in there too. The things that you want to check off, that you want to do, that you want to keep track of every day, those are great database questions at the top of your journal, because you can see those in a multitude of ways on a calendar or on a spreadsheet, or even on this gallery view. Because if I go to the gallery view, you can change what you see here also. So I could throw weight there. I just added the weight into that. Or this year, I could turn that on, and see there's, and ideally, if that's showing up the same every year, or every day, then you know that you're staying focused on, you're not fluctuating. If it is fluctuating, then maybe you need to reevaluate what you want to get done that year. Maybe what you originally thought isn't where you need to go. This is just a sample to kind of give you an idea how I'm doing my journal right now. But it's got its own focus than keeping track of task management per se, but they're still connected. So if I go, let me go in here. Here is a list of all of the tasks I got done that day. So it's related to tasks, to the task management database I showed you already. So when I clicked on something as done that day, this is where it showed up in my journal. So when I open this day and I need to I need to account for what I did this day at work, at the nonprofit where I work, I can look here and I can say, okay, I got these things done and sent out and so on. So, and if I need to look back at what the details were, all I have to do is click on that item. It's going to take me to that note. So nothing goes away, nothing gets destroyed, but there's a record of it. And I could search for Barkley if I was to go up to the top here and do a search. Quick find. Barkley. It would pull that up. Well, let's see, it's slow. Boy, my computer is not normally this slow. I probably need to shut it down and start over. Pay Barkley card, there it is. And I could open that up and look into what that was and how much I paid and that sort of stuff. So that's the journal. Okay, so these are two separate databases. They have different focuses. They're trying to keep track of different things. Um, and I'm very clear about what the purposes of each of those are. So that's what the first one is. Now, the workflow, I wanted to say a couple places where I put these. So I told you this is the master task list, but I have some some linked databases where I more likely am going to need to keep track of when I get things done. I mean, I could do it on the master task list, but my workflow on this is my, so what I've done on the today then, this is just a list of today's tasks. I've whittled that down from the master task list, and I could see, and I don't even look at this by board. I could create I don't do the board here. My primary focus on the dashboard right now is today's tasks, and that's what this filter is. Timeline is today. So all I'm looking at today is these tasks right here. And I need to scoot this back over. So when I get something done today, and I should have a task here that says Notion video, but if I was, and we'll just throw that in here. Let me do that. Create Notion video. And I think I do actually have that someplace. But anyway, so if I got that done today, then I would, and what I do, because this also says date complete is empty. Okay, so if I mark this first, it's going to go away before I check this. So I really do this intentionally. This is the first thing I do, and when I check this, it's taking it off of this master task list, because this master task list filters out the dones. If I don't want this to go away, let's say I need to do that next week also, it's a repeating task, then I don't check this because I don't want it to come off of this task list. But I do want to record that I did it today. So all I do, here's that today that I just created today. And you can see, the rings are still open. There's the 200 pounds. This is the today. All I do is I click that there. It adds it to today in the journal. That's all it's doing. And it disappeared because I have this filter to remove it from my today list when I've marked it completed right here. So these two columns are doing different things. I want it to go away here because I've done it today and I want to record that I've done it today. But I didn't want it to remove it from the master task list, which is right here. So if I go to the journal and I go to today, and I open that up, and I go to the things that were created, there is that item. And I can open that up, and there's the link back to the task database. Okay, and if I wanted to go in there, let's say I had notes in there, that opens that page, and I should have put some notes to demonstrate. There would be any notes that I had associated with creating this Notion video today. Okay, so I'm going to click out of that. So that's the relationship that we created between these two databases. So how do we do that? Oh, actually, I was going to show you one other workflow. Another workflow I have is right here. So here's this is a linked database. It's a smaller version of this master task list. So if I go to Artisan Soaps, all the stuff that I'm doing here today, this is and I have this organized by a workflow. So when I make something, I need to make sure that I have the ingredients. I make the product. I add it to the manufacturer database, which is basically keeps track of manufacture. It's one that I tried to replicate here in Notion, and they do too many things with what do I want to say, calculations and things like that I am not versed enough to be able to recreate here, and I'm not sure that they could be. So, but I do need to record it in CraftyBase, which is where I keep track of that stuff. I label the product, so that's a step. I need to make sure I add barcodes because that's something that we've done recently. I don't want something to end out on the floor and it doesn't have a barcode. I want to make sure that the SEO and the image and all that on the website is up to date. I added it into the workflow to make sure it got done. Otherwise, it just never gets done. So before it goes out on the floor, this has to happen. notify waiting customers, add inventory to the website so that it's available for purchase. I promote on social media, and I promote in the newsletter. So this database, all this database is doing is noting um, uh, workflow. But if I want to say that something is done, let's say I have, I made silky butter this past week, body butter. So I open this up. It's still connected to that master task list. And in order to show that I got it done, and I still have one more thing I need to do. But if I click here, it's again going to pull up the journal, and I click here, add it, which would add it to today's journal item, and it would show up on today something that I got done today. That's another example of that relationship to the journal. But remember, this is a linked database. I could look at this, click out of there. It's set up as a board, but I could look at this as a spreadsheet too. This is all connected to this master task list. It's just filtered differently so that I see just the things I need to see on this page. So, okay, that covers the workflow. Those are the different ways that I am using the relationship between my task list and my database. So how do you create that relationship from your, from a task list to a journal or vice versa? So we'll just demonstrate that really quickly, and this may be repetitive. So I'm gonna, let's see here. How do I want it? Let's do it this way. So I'm gonna go to the task list. Let's say you have created your master task list, and you're ready, and you've created a journal database. So you've got those both set up. So basically, all you do is from your task list, you're gonna go property type. You want to change that to relation. Search for the journal, and I just type journal. There's the journal. Create relation, and that's all you have to do. I changed this to, as you'll notice, I had changed this before to date completed. And I'm not going to do that again because it's going to duplicate, and it probably won't let me do that. But you could call it that. You could call it journal, so that you can keep track of where you've connected that. And I'll go ahead and do it here just to keep it different. So now I know that anything I put in here is going to connect to that journal database. So I can put today, click away, there it is. Okay, now if I need to go to that, or let's say if I go to the journal, let's see, there's more than one way to get to things, obviously. And I click on today. There was that one that we connected to. This is the new one, okay? So you can see the difference. This is column 1, property 1. So property 1, that was one. I didn't change. This is at the end. This is the one I just created. I haven't changed the titles here. I'll keep that one. But what I could do here is change this to journal example. That'll just change. Okay, so that's just all that does is it changes that title. I'm going to go ahead and leave this. I could call that tasks, I guess. Task list. Okay, that's my original task list. That's the one I don't want to go away. Okay, that's the real one. This is the example I just created. But here this is, and again, if I want to go in here and see, some details about this, all of the stuff that's in the other database is right here. So I don't have to go to the other database to see that. But if I have notes in here, if I have notes in here that I want to see, then that's when you would click in there and it would go directly to that page. So it kind of just, it just links them, and it gives you a kind of a preview of any information you need there. It makes it easy to keep those items connected, helps you keep records. that sort of thing. I hope that this is helpful. So let's go over just briefly what we've done here today. We talked a little bit about what that relational database is. It's two different databases, and you're creating a relationship between them so that it's easy to get back and forth between them. It's easy to record on this database when you've done something here, or to record on this database something that you want to keep track of from here. Okay, so if you're taking orders and you want to keep track of who has ordered this, you link it to the customer, and you have a speedy connection to that customer's contact information. Vice versa, if you're taking an order from a customer, you start maybe with the customer's name, you pull that up, and you link it to an order that you need to create. Okay, we talked a little bit about where that's at and how to do that in Notion. Again, you want to make sure that the databases are separate. They have each one is doing its own thing, and kind of build that database accordingly. Consider your workflow as you're creating that. So, if you don't have time to hunt around for a customer's name in Notion, then you need to make it really easy to simply create a page, and take that customer's information. So, like for example, in this case, I have customer orders. That's what this database is. There's nothing else in this page. So when a customer comes, all I have to do is click plus. The sheet comes up, and I can start taking their information. Boom. I have nothing else to worry about there. Then I can start connecting it to a separate database. So consider your workflow, and then create the relationship between, and that is probably the easiest part of the whole thing. So this was a two-way relationship between task list and journal. I hope it's helpful. This is probably one of the longer videos. Again, I'm not an expert at this, but just sharing how I've done it, and many of you have asked me to keep going on some of these things. So I'll do a couple more. They probably won't be as we'll see what they mean, but they'll show different use cases where I have used these. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye bye.